All right, I'm gonna finish up this. What is this? Row B, shelf A. Like, oh, mountain of books. I'm sitting on the floor, in case you haven't noticed. But finishing up here, the Wasteland, the T.S. Eliot poem, more than 100 years old now, from 1922. The Norton Critical Edition. These Norton Critical Editions are really cool. I have one of the picture of Dorian Gray. They will cover the work. They will cover the background of the work. They will then publish things that influence the work. Then they will the criticism, like the critical edition, will examine the reception and have reviews and impacts and essays written by critics of the work at the time. Of course, this is nearly 100 years ago. And it's cool. There's a painting. That's Wyndham Lewis' painting. The more on him later at some point. But yeah, right there, Portrait of T.S. Eliot by Wyndham Lewis. Okay? A guy I found out about through Jonathan Bowden. But the T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland, of course. Lovecraft is not a fan, but I am a big fan. I like Eliot a lot. I like his early stuff. I like his religious stuff. The Wasteland is one of those weird free verse poems. Like I had mentioned, he was very influenced by the French symbolist poets. Of course, he could read French. And of course, I'm going to go over the poem. I'll read some of the poem. There is a thing from the poem that is that it used to be used in the everyday thing, right? April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us, coming over the Steinbarger Sea. When the shower of rain, we stopped in the colonnade and went on into sunlight into the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. Bin ka keiner Russenstamm aus Litauen ich Deutsch. And when we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousin, he took me out on a sled, and I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight. And down we went. In the mountains there you feel free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter. And I like this line here. What are the roots of that clutch? What branches grow? This is one of my favorite lines right here. Out of this stony rubbish. Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images. Yeah. Anyway, that's a very controversial poem. A lot of people don't like it. They say it's the disillusionment after the World War, which of course Eliot always said that it was nothing like that. So you don't know if he was being cheeky about it or not, but a fan of his. I actually like some of his essays. The critical stuff's a little, highbrow, but some of his essays later, some of them, one of them got him in kind of trouble a little bit. Why? What gets you in trouble in the 20th century? If you talk about it, I don't know. I have no idea. Let me put this back. This so we go to the Journey of the Center of the Earth. I have not read it. This is now Barnes & Noble. Now, Barnes & Noble, yes, you go there. It's a lot of the books in the new sections. And the history books are slanted, to say the least, other than the Osprey stuff that pops up in there. The magazine section, though, well, you see me with the magazines. However, the book annex, I've shown you the cool book annex that they have. Big books, lots of pictures for a good price and actually informative. Also, the Barnes & Noble's classics. Okay, now, certain classics, you want to avoid the introductions because they all, racist, sexist, homophobic, all that stuff, right? But they usually do a good job. They always have a nice painting on the cover for it. But this is Journey to the Center of the Earth. I've never read this yet. I have not read this yet. Of course, I've seen the movie on Channel 5 like a million times. Remember the one? I remember there was a cartoon of it, too, that they showed. A Hanna-Barbera cartoon where the duck... I think I saw that first as a kid, and the duck was like a character. But then if you see the movie, which it was based on, the duck doesn't last too long. he gets eaten by the villain of the group, but he gets his. I remember that. Like I said, look forward to reading it. There's actually illustrations in there. It came out in 1864. So, this book, I got this book, and it's interesting. The Secret History of the Jersey Devil. Now, it's not the idea of the Jersey Devil. Of course, the Pine Barrens in South Jersey, right? This creature and this origins. Actually, it's like it's where cryptozoology and of course the very Quaker sort of weird mysticism they had, along with political cartoons and rivalries between various pamphlet publishers and writers, including Ben Franklin. Now, the idea of the monster is actually not as interesting to me in this book as the idea of like pamphlets, how even before the printing press, people were able to make pamphlets, and how despite, especially amongst like the Quakers in Pennsylvania, but the South Jersey Quakers, very strange, a lot of interesting characters coming out of that. A lot of these pamphlets were very mystical. They dealt with there were almanacs. And there was always the ones that sold well always had a monster on the cover, and always dealt particularly with like omens, like deformed births. Of course, comets, other things, sightings of weird creatures. Always, the creature itself wasn't the object of the horror. It's what the creature's being seen, what it would portend, what it would portend. Interesting. Of course, I'm not going to go over the book too much because I want to do it on its own. So I'm just trying to show you the books on my shelf here. But okay, Edgar Saltis. Now, decadent stories. I love that era. With the big hats and the mustache, the dandies and whatnot, and all kinds of things. Edgar Saltis is interesting. He wrote a book. I think, what was it? The philosophy? Was it? Oh man, how am I gonna forget this? How am I gonna forget the book? Hold on. Very influenced by Schopenhauer. The idea of pessimism, antinatalism, which I'm not for. Okay, I'm not, but I'm just saying that it's fascinating. What was the other books he wrote? There was a book called There's Something of Negation. He wrote a historical book about the Roman Empire. I don't know why. I gotta find it. So I don't have as much books left, so I can try to find it. Right, The Philosophy of Disenchantment, and the Autonomy of Negation, which I haven't seen, but The Philosophy of Disenchantment, which is a lot of it's about Schopenhauer, but it's pretty much a very, very I would say, pessimistic book. And these are the stories. I read one of the stories so far. No decadent horror, at least not yet. Now, of course, I'm always looking for the weird tale, horror antecedents in decadence. But the horror was enough. The real horror of what was the century to come. And that you had men like this were the ones to nail it, unlike the other, your others. Speaking of cinema, right. The BFI, was it the British Film Institute, Film Classics? I don't know why I got this in a used bookstore. And like I say, I bought it. This was much cheaper than this. This is pounds, baby. Remember, where was that from? Right, I guess essays about the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is now more than a century old. Brilliant film. I remember the pictures of it used to scare me. The scenery is, cubist, as they say, expressionist. Although it's just fascinating, the whole film and all the essays about it. Of course, I always liked the fact that the writers of Caligari intended a subversion, and their subversion was actually overturned and subverted them by the director, making it brilliant. Where of course, the hero who is the madman, the authority is really the mad one. No, he's the mad one. So, and if you look at the film, you'll see some interesting things with that. So, but I must hurry. Ghosts of the Black Chamber. This book is cool. This is basically surrealist, experimental Dada photography. Now, I'm a big photography fan, and I like a lot of this. Like I said, I'm gonna go over these books in here. Some of the stuff is very degenerate. Some of the stuff is very cool, and some of the stuff is good in spite of itself. Dante's Inferno, another Barnes and Noble version, and I also have this one I got at the book, my old job. Another version of the Inferno. I have not read it. I've actually seen the movie, the old silent film, and I know bits of it. I mean, you see this all throughout culture, right? Dante's Inferno, but I've yet to really sit down and read it. So, the Nightland. This is, of course, William Hope Hodgson. And this is like his really dark. It's hard to describe what this is. This is so far in the future. It's like a dark fantasy, almost maybe like what James describes with another writer who I have not read, Gene Wolfe. But this is before the war, and I mean the first war. The Nightland. I have not read that yet either. Of course, Ligotti I've gone over. Very interesting writer, man. Very interesting. He's able to write different kinds of stories, but always with that weird, surrealist edge to it. I mean, you could say it's bleak, but some of them are so weird. It's like you don't even have time to be bleak. You're just sort of hit by the, like a scary, weird street that doesn't make any sense is more scary than any creature or any monster. But there's plenty of monsters in there too. Of course, Euripides, the Greek tragedies, of course, Medea, right? I recommend as a side thing, it's nothing to do with books, but if you ever see it, they show it. I had gone over, Jeffers had done his translation of Medea for the stage. It was actually a very popular stage performance, Medea. And there's one on, it's a shot on the old video in the 70s. Not with the original actress. The actress is cool. The original actress who played Medea ends up playing the servant woman, years later, which is kind of cool, like a passing of the torch to a younger actress. Really, really amazing acting in it. A mix of British actors and American actors, but really, really interesting. You should check it out if you want to see, if you're into, plays and stuff like that. There's a place, I actually like the idea of plays, in terms of like films. A play you can do with, just a few people and not even filming the damn thing. But, of course, the Greek tragedies are pretty horrific, particularly his. He's like the downbeat one, with all the tragedy. He takes it to another level, I think. So, Algernon Blackwood, of course, another Weird Tale writers. I have not read much of this. I haven't read The Willows. I haven't read Wendigo. I read Ancient Sorceries, which is like the inspiration for cat people. That was pretty good. I just haven't. There's a lot to do. Of course, I've gone over the George Romero adaptation. I told you the story of him waiting patiently to sign it for me when one of those autograph assholes was asking them to sign like a whole stack of stuff. And at the last book here, Mr. Wells. I've gone over Mr. Wells, his war game book that he published just before the actual Great War. But his selected short stories, and I've read a number of these, not all of them. The one, The Land, what is it? I'll have to really sit down and read all of them. The Time Machine is included. Of course, The Time Machine is a brilliant, very dark one. The Land Ironclads. Okay, this pretty much predicts tanks. Okay, armored vehicles. Of course, far more successful and decisive than the actual tanks were in the war that was to come. But also, the Stolen Bacillus is kind of funny. It's kind of funny in light of recent events. What events? What happened? Nothing happened years ago, right? Did nothing happen? They say nothing happened. So. And a bunch of these interesting ones here. I have to go over the shorter stories, although the Time Machine is included. But like I said, I have read The Land Ironclads, and I have read the Stolen Bacillus, right? Virus. Someone released a virus. But it's actually a funny story. It's actually a humorous story. Mr. Wells can have a sense of humor despite his rather bleak science fiction at times. So, and this is the books. It took 3 videos of almost 15 minutes to cover it. Let's reading. I will say, reading does make you smarter. It does. Trust me.